If you're looking for an extremely lightweight, relatively inexpensive folding defensive knife, then I highly recommend you check out this SOG Trident. Hey guys, my name is Matt, and like I said, this is my review of what I believe to be excellent SOG Trident. I gotta be honest, when I first saw this knife, it wasn't in person, it was online, and I wasn't a huge fan, and I'll tell you the reason for that right now. It was the handle to blade length ratio. Now normally most guys I come across, myself included, prefer as close to possible 1-to-1 blade handle length ratio, meaning that they're about the same size, obviously. What that does is gives you a really efficient carry size, you know what I mean? When it's folded, you got a relatively short, not with this knife obviously, but we'll get to that, but with a good ratio, you've got a relatively short knife when it's folded, and then when you open it up, you still got a decent sized blade. That's the idea. The SOG Trident, however, is clearly not that way. It's got this big handle on it, which I didn't think I would like, but I ended up actually getting this knife for Christmas from my girlfriend at the time. She got it from Walmart, and I got it in hand, and I grasped this handle, and immediately I realized that I might have been a little premature in judging this knife, because this is one of my favorite folding knife handles that I've ever held personally, and there's a couple reasons for that. The first one being this guard up front. First of all, I think it looks really good. I think this handle looks great, especially this guard up here, this choil that turns into a guard. I think that looks really good. Another reason is this handle is one of the only ones I've ever seen that's jimped on all four corners. Right here, this is kind of a poor attempt at jimping. It's a little shallow, not very tractionable, but it's still there. Where it really shines is in the back portion here, which I think is a often overlooked portion of the handle, because this is really going to lock in those two back fingers, and someone is really going to have a difficult time taking this knife from you, and I really don't see any scenario where it would slip out of your hands. You're really going to get a good purchase on this. There's also jimping up top here. It's a little slick, but that's okay, because on the blade it is excellent. You can see there it's got really sharp shoulders, and that really locks the skin of your thumb in really well. So I love that, and that brings us to the blade, which is another excellent feature of this knife. I love it. I absolutely love this long clip point blade. I think it's beautiful. It's also great for really any task you're going to throw at this. EDC or you know, emergency, defensive, self-defense use, it's going to be fine. You got this nice delicate tip there, really nice tip. I don't think you're ever going to break that unless you do something you really shouldn't be doing, like stabbing it into a really hard media. It's got a nice belly here. Love that. The front portion of this blade, I love it. Great belly. I'm not a huge fan of the serrations, I gotta be honest. Nothing against SOG. I generally don't like serrations on any of my folding knives. For some reason, like I said, you know, I couldn't really do anything about it because it was a gift. For some reason at Walmart and those other stores, they generally tend to have the partially serrated models in stock, and I'm not really sure why that is, but it seems to be the case. You know, like I said, I'll take it. It was a gift, so not really too big of an issue. Moving on to the lockup. Out of box, it was perfect. It was perfection. There was nothing wrong, no up and down, no side-to-side movement. That being said, I did something stupid with the knife. I'll hold my hands up and admit it. I was building a fire, and I went ahead and tried to baton some wood with this knife. Now, I'm not a complete idiot. It wasn't like a huge log or anything. I was trying to make some kindling, but nonetheless, I was still doing some spine whacking on the top of this knife, and that really took its toll, and I think you'll be able to hear that here. Definitely a lot of play there. I'm not going to lie, there's a lot of it. However, like I said, that's entirely my fault. I did something stupid with the knife, and I really don't think you're going to see that if you stick to the roll of this knife. You know, it's not a hardcore wilderness survival blade. There's other great choices for that. Maybe some of the cold steel lineup would be good for that. This isn't one of them, so I really don't think you're going to have that problem. And even now, with this, you know, it's still a usable knife, definitely, and if I needed to employ it in, you know, a more serious use, it would do fine. The speed, also excellent. This is one of SOG's many assisted openers, kind of like, the Aegis and the Flash series are all that way. Really excellent, great speed. This one might be a little slower because after I damaged the knife a little bit, I actually took it apart and tried to maintain it a little bit. I wouldn't recommend doing that. I'm fairly skilled at technical things. Been tinkering my entire life, and it was a real pain in the ass to get this back together. So I really wouldn't recommend taking this knife apart, but speed out of box is going to be very nice. One thing I don't like, and SOG does this on a lot of their blades, is this safety feature, which I really think is a bit of a misnomer, because I can't think of anything more unsafe than if, let's say you're a civilian, you're not in the military or anything, you're probably never going to need to employ a knife in a defensive role. But let's say there's that one time you really need it. You really need it to defend your life. You pull it out of your pocket, you go to actuate it, and it doesn't come out. Okay, that could definitely happen with this, because I worked construction this summer, and this was the knife I was generally carrying on the job site, and all the time I would take it out, I would go to flick it open, and I would realize that the safety had been actuated in my pocket, which is very easy to do, and so I ended up super gluing it. I'm sure you can see that, and I would recommend you would do that as well. I see why it makes more sense on this knife than a lot of other knives, because you've got this rope cutter here. I guess not rope, it'd be a little too narrow for rope, but it worked really well for 550 cord, and that's what I haven't really used it, more than a couple times, but that's what I've used it for. And if you were to actuate this safety, when you pulled the cord through, the blade wouldn't move. You wouldn't have to hold it. It would just stay in place and cut very nicely. So I understand why they did it, but I think it's a feature I don't really need, and it gets in my way a lot. Speaking of 550 cord, excellent lanyard hole there. You could easily fit some 550 cord through there without having to hollow it out if you didn't want to. Well done on that. That brings us to one of my favorite features of the knife, which is the SOG pocket clip. A lot of guys talk about how much they love this, and I'm definitely one of them. It's actually my favorite pocket clip of any manufacturer I can think of. Spyderco, Benchmade, Cold Steel. I don't like any of them as much as this one. The reason for that, obviously, is this loop over up here, which provides a very deep carry. It's going to be very deep in your pocket, and a lot of guys like that so the knife, doesn't fall out. I actually like it because it conceals the knife very well. I actually live in a city. I live in Pittsburgh, and some of you guys might walk. You might live in the Midwest or South, and kind of not in a city, kind of in the country, and you can walk around with a knife, and no one's really gonna care. I could probably do that too, but it's a shame. A lot of people in today's society, they're scared of things like this, and I really don't like walking around my area with an inch, maybe a half an inch of knife showing. I really prefer to have it concealed like this, and unless someone knows their knives, they're not really going to look at that clip and instantly think, oh, big tactical blade, so I really like how this buries in the pocket. I guess the only really other thing to cover for this knife is the weight, which is an excellent 3.6 ounces. I find it just disappears in my carry system, and I think that for most people it will, for them too. It's really, it's light in hand, but also it feels substantial. Really just an excellent design by SOG, excuse me, so good job by them. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you liked the review, and be sure to tune in next time.